Hey there, Cinephiles. Today I wanted to talk about me experiencing Barbenheimer during the WGA and SAG-AFTRA strike. Before I get into my thoughts on the double billing, I definitely need to touch on this strike. Why are the Writers Guild of America and the Screen Actors Guild / American Federation of Television and Radio Artists on strike? Well, there's two main reasons across both unions, and that's to have livable wages and residuals, as well as not being replaced by AI. In the case of the WGA, they're not even asking for 1 full percentage point more of the profits from the studios in order to satisfy their needs. It takes less than a single full percentage point of profit from the studios to make sure that their writers aren't going hungry and can afford health care. The actual breakdown of how much more these studios would be paying to the WGA is as follows. Disney would be paying an extra $75 million a year, Netflix $68 million a year, Warner Brothers Discovery $47 million a year, Paramount Global $45 million a year, NBC Universal $34 million a year, Amazon $32 million a year, Sony $25 million a year, and finally Apple at $17 million more a year. These totals end up being somewhere between 0.148% and 0.108%. Once again, not even a full or half of a percentage point more. But according to Bob Iger from Disney, and in his words, he says it is disturbing and unrealistic what the writers and actors are asking for, aka two of the most important departments for the money-making machine that these companies are. Bob Iger is a man that makes $27 million a year off of the work of these actors and writers. And now he and many other production company CEOs are willing to wait until the writers and actors are homeless before coming back to the negotiations table. And if you think I am lying about that, they literally said that verbatim. These production companies are proving to be so evil that they are cutting the branches off of trees in order for the picket lines to not have shade. This was specifically done outside of the Universal Studios lot, where it was also kind of illegal that they did that. And if the studios couldn't seem even more like a cartoon villain, one of their proposals, they wanted to scan the faces of every background actor they had and use their likeliness for freaking ever in any way they wanted and only pay them for 1 single day's worth of work. A single day's pay worth of work, which isn't enough already, to use their faces forever. These CEOs are so tone deaf because how could anyone ever agree to that? To break it down in the most simple terms, pay your writers and actors fairly and don't replace them with AI. That's the most simplest thing these studios could do. There are plenty of other things that these guilds want, and I am supporting these artists and getting everything they want because it is insane what the studios are asking for. And the crazy thing is, the bigger the studio, the more villainous they seem, because small studios like A24 actually agree to the demands of these actors and writers. So it can be done with the amount of money that these big studios are making. If you want to help out these artists in their strikes, please check the links below for how you can help them, especially if you're not near the picketing lines. I also want to say, please support your local movie theaters, and I know many of you have been recently because the box office for Barbenheimer weekend was insane. In fact, the 4th best of all time. But please keep that energy going because neither guild has called for a boycott against theaters nor streaming services. I also want to point out that SAG-AFTRA clearly said that reviewing movies is still completely fine, so I will continue to do that here on this channel while also mixing it up a little bit more. But any new free or paid promotion is kind of frowned upon by them. So please do your research, see what you can and can't do in order to help and support these artists that clearly need all of our help against these big CEOs. But alright, let's get into Barbenheimer weekend and my reviews for Barbie and Oppenheimer. At this point now, I've seen Oppenheimer twice and Barbie 3 times, but I'll talk about them in the order that I saw them on Barbenheimer day. I started out my day with Barbie, directed and co-written by Greta Gerwig, aka Film Sis's favorite director at the moment, and it is good. Like, really good. Of the two films, this is the one I was most excited for, and I am so glad to say that Greta Gerwig delivered once again. It may not be her best movie, but it has some stellar highlights. The movie overall starts pretty okay, especially compared to the rest of the movie. It's not bad, but it's not great either. However, it's not until Barbie starts trying to find a solution for her problems and gets into the real world in which the movie really picks up for me. When Barbie and Ken get into the real world and the true themes of the movie starts to show its colors, you are so hooked, and if you're not with it, especially by the third act, you're just reality challenged. I mean, the third act is pretty much perfect. You get this wonderful journey for the main Barbie and some of the other Barbies too, but you also get such a great secondary arc with the Kens. Ryan Gosling, you are a star, and I am so glad you're showing more and more of your comedic chops. He brings the perfect Kenergy to this role, and as he continues to grow into the role in the movie, you can tell he's giving it 1010%. He alone deserves the supporting actor win, if not nomination at the very least. That and his original song, I'm Just Ken. And shoot, I wouldn't be surprised if this movie had multiple original song nominations, especially Billie Eilish's song. As for Margot Robbie, she was perfect casting as well. Everyone always talks about how she looks like a real life Barbie, but the best thing about her performance was those emotional scenes. The journey that her character goes through is just so extremely well done. From the writing to the acting, everything just blends together so well, and you just believe Barbie. All in all, this feels like a natural progression from her in Babylon to playing Barbie here, and I really hope that she gets an Oscar nomination for lead actress, even though it is a comedy and the Oscars don't tend to like to give out more than one nomination for a comedy. Margot Robbie just does something so amazing here that she needs to be in one of the 5 slots once it's Oscar season. Other nominations for this movie should come from production design, costume design, screenplay, and a directing nom too. There's so much I would love to get into story-wise, but to keep this as non-spoilery as possible, I'll just tell you some of my favorite stuff that this movie does. This film gets into the experiences of women and how they're treated amongst society, especially growing up in a patriarchal world. It also deals with how men can grow to be part of the problem rather than becoming allies to these women who are already going through so much. And it also deals with how Barbie and its messaging as a product can be seen from so many different angles and how it hurts some people, but it also uplifts others. And let's not forget about the whole mother relationship dynamic that's seen throughout the movie. All of these profound topics are discussed in this movie and more, all while being able to be balanced with some great comedy. And Greta Gerwig, you are just amazing for that. And it just has banger after banger on the soundtrack too. Overall, the movie is able to deliver some important messages and themes in such a unique and creative way. The growth for the stars alongside some very memorable characters just make for this to be one of the best times I'll have all year in a theater. I just hope the rabid Barbie fans don't cause a pink shortage in the world. At least not another one. But I am excited to dress up as some of these characters for Halloween, so stay tuned. I give Barbie a 4 out of 5 stars. I followed up the Great Beach Off with Oppenheimer at a completely different theater. Yes, a completely different theater, but hey, that's Barbenheimer day, baby. It was nice though because going to 2 completely different theaters, I just kept seeing more and more people dressed up in pink or in suits or in pink suits. Overall, it was just nice to see that in multiple places, so many people were just so excited for both movies. But anyway, getting into Oppenheimer. Written and directed by Christopher Nolan, Film Bro's favorite movie director at the moment, is thankfully also really good. In this, we see Robert Oppenheimer in a trial for his security clearance, as well as Strauss in a trial of his own. The rest of the film are the events that these gentlemen are referring to in their own trials, and it spans all the way from Oppenheimer's college years to his later years in life. And despite being a biopic, the structure of this film plays very well into Nolan's sensibility of playing with time. But before I continue, I gotta come clean and say that I've never really been a fan of Nolan. I respected his craft and what he does in his filmmaking, but most of his movies just don't really land with me. If you know me, I'm the first to admit that I find Interstellar and The Dark Knight incredibly overrated. But that being said, Oppenheimer might be one of Nolan's best, and I actually really like this movie. This is the tale of a man that is basically defending his whole life's work as well as his whole life against the US government. It's engaging, and although it is a bit too long, this will be one of my favorite movies for the whole year. Cillian Murphy at this point has the lead actor Oscar locked up, and it would take an incredible force to dethrone him, I think. And with the way some movies are starting to be pushed back, it may not happen for the rest of the year. You go through every single emotion imaginable with him, and for as ambiguous as Oppie can be, you still understand him. Within Nolan's filmography, Cillian delivers a performance on the same level as Heath Ledger does as Joker, if not better. And I also gotta say how clear it is that Robert Downey Jr. is clearly gunning for at least an Oscar nomination in the supporting actor category, and it's well deserved. I'd be shocked if he wasn't in one of those 5 slots. Even though I would say he's not as good as Ryan Gosling and Barbie, but that's a discussion for another time. All of these superb performances combined with a score for the ages, some fantastic cinematography, and just being so solid all around in every single technical category, it just makes for such a great film that I haven't been able to stop thinking about. And despite all of the mind-blowing technical aspects, the takeaway from this movie are the themes and lessons of some serious dread and how the world is just on the brink of self-destruction every single moment we're alive. Look, I'm not saying it's the happiest film ever, but it's still a damn good film. And it is because of all of this that this is Nolan's best work emotionally. Really, the only issue I have with the movie is that it's too long. There's 15 minutes that could have been cut out probably. I give Oppenheimer a 4 out of 5 stars. The best thing about the whole Barbenheimer experience is that both of these films are genuinely so good. To me, the quality of these two films are neck and neck, and which one I prefer or like better, well, that just switches every day. And writing out my thoughts for these movies just made it all the more confusing on which one I'd prefer. I did discover that one thing I love about this double billing is how in both you see the fragility of man's egos be the cause for heinous and villainous actions towards the protagonists of both films, which in general is a through line that you see in history itself, but it's so funny that these two movies have this very core thing in common, especially because they'll be tied together in history forever. I also do love how incredibly financially and critically successful this whole Barbenheimer weekend was. And a few weeks ago, due to the smash hit success of this, I would have exclaimed that movie and cinemas are back, but that strike that's happening right now, that is all at the fault of the studios. They are fumbling one of the biggest bags right now. We could have reached a sense of normalcy in the film-going experience that we haven't had since before COVID. And in fact, for how successful that these two movies were, it could have been even better. It could have been a bigger and better Hollywood, but these studios have become the true villain and they're losing out on so much money. And hopefully this makes them realize how important the writers and actors are and how much you should treat them and compensate them fairly. Will it happen? I don't know. But the momentum that's being lost right now is truly insane. Dune 2 might get pushed, Willy Wonka might get pushed, and some other movies are already being pushed. It's insane. For the last quarter of the year, it could have been so successful critically and financially because you see these people who are moviegoers actually going to the movies for something that isn't these huge major blockbusters that are costing $300 million to make. You're getting these auteur-driven movies that are actually good and people are actually going to want to see. And shoot, Barbie as a recording of this had already hit 400 million, and Oppenheimer as a rated R movie had one of the biggest openings for rated R movies ever. I don't know, hopefully soon these billionaires can realize how important it is to treat writers and actors as people and as fairly as possible, because I want to continue to go to the movies and see new movies that I will grow to love and know that everyone behind and in front of the camera is being treated fairly, being compensated fairly, and won't be threatened by being replaced by AI. But alright, those are my thoughts on experiencing Barbenheimer during a strike. But alright, be sure to let me know what you think, where you stand with Barbie, where you stand with Oppenheimer, which one do you prefer more? Or were you one of those people that ended up watching Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 on its second weekend? As always, thank you guys for liking, commenting, and subscribing. Be sure to follow us on our socials. Stay tuned for more Idea Films content, and I'll write you later.